Hey you guys, my name is Jeff. Welcome to the channel. Today we are going to talk about 10 ETFs for the rest of your life. Ten of my favorite all-time ETFs, and I'm going to tell you why I like them. And hopefully by the time you get to the number one ETF, which is the last one I'm going to list, you're going to have a really good idea of why it is that I think these ETFs are worthy of an extra look. This is not financial advice, okay? I'm making this video to educate you guys, to teach you something, so that by the time you get to the end of this video, you're going to learn about some new ETFs that you have never discovered before. Starting our list, at number one is SCHD, and that is the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. And what I like about this ETF is that it's very well diversified across stocks of companies that pay a dividend. So these tend to be more stable companies. They've been around for a long time and they are profitable. Top holdings are Amgen, Merck, IBM, Lockheed, and PepsiCo. And the first two are healthcare companies, so these are solid companies. They're going to be around for a long time. I feel like the expense ratio for this ETF is very reasonable at 0.06. And one really nice thing about this particular ETF is the total return, if you were to go out for the last 5 years, has been 56% positive. And as all of you know, there's been so much volatility and markets have been going up and down. This ETF has performed very well. It's even outperformed the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF and the Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF. So there is number 10, SCHD. Now the number 9 ETF on our list is VXUS, and that is the Vanguard Extended Market ETF. And what this ETF aims to do is invest in all of the mid-cap and small-cap stocks in the US stock market, not in the S&P 500. Top 5 holdings are Blackstone, Palo Alto Networks, Marvel Technology, Airbnb, and Uber. So these are names many of you guys have heard of. It's a very cheap ETF to hold. The expense ratio is just 0.06. Number 8 on the list is AVUV, and that's the Avantis US Small Cap Value ETF. So this invests only in small cap stocks, and of those stocks, only those that are considered cheap based on different metrics. Here are the top 5 holdings: Ryder, Triton, Sanmina, PBF Energy, and Thor Industries. So these are probably companies you've never heard of, or perhaps you've heard of one of them or so. The expense ratio is 0.25, and the return of this particular ETF is 56% over the last 3 years. You have to realize this is a relatively new ETF. It did not exist 5 years ago. So the 56% return is just since 2019. Still, I think it's worth looking at. Do some more research, but this is an ETF that I think many of you guys have never heard of. Number 7 is RWJ, and that is the Invesco S&P Small Cap 600 Revenue ETF. Now this invests in companies that have fast growing revenue. Now this doesn't speak to profitability or how much income they're making, but simply small cap companies that are growing their revenues quickly. Top 5 holdings are PBF Energy, World Fuel Services, United Natural Foods, Group 1 Automotive, and Anderson's. The expense ratio on this particular ETF is a bit higher than the others. It's 0.39, but the 5-year return is 71%, which is a lot higher than most of the other ETFs on this list. This may be because companies that are small caps that are growing revenues have done very well in the last 5 years. I think RWJ is definitely worth a close look, especially if you want to diversify your investment portfolio towards small cap stocks. Number 6 is VXUS, and that is the Vanguard Total International Stock ETF. Now, one thing that I really like about this ETF is it's incredibly well diversified. It only invests in companies outside the US. So if you're already invested, for example, in VOO or VTI, or you already have investments in the US but you're looking to diversify, VXUS actually holds 8,016 stocks. So a lot of companies. The top 5 are Nestle, Taiwan Semiconductor, Roche Holdings, Shell, and Samsung Electronics. This particular ETF is really cheap with a 0.07 expense ratio. And one thing to note is over the last 5 years, this has actually lost 9%, so it's -9. This is the only ETF on this list that is negative. And the immediate reaction one would have when looking at this is, oh, I don't want to have a losing ETF. You know, the thing's lost money. I'm going to stay away from this. But another way to look at it is these stocks definitely have not done very well over the last 5 years. It's possible some of these investments might be undervalued, and so maybe you want to invest just to diversify your portfolio, and maybe, you know, in the next several years, these are not going to be negative returning stocks. Again, no guarantees, but just helping you with the mindset of why anyone would want to invest in an ETF that has negative returns over the last 5 years. All right, now we are pulling into number 5, so we are halfway there. VGT, this is the Vanguard Information Technology ETF. Now this is investing in tech stocks, okay? You're gonna recognize all of the top 5 names. They are Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Visa, and MasterCard. This particular ETF is very cheap with a 0.10 expense ratio. And the return of this particular ETF is 102% over the last 5 years, which is absolutely just knocking the ball out of the park. That's about as high a return as you're going to get. And one thing that I like about this ETF, the other kind of competing tech-heavy ETF is QQQ. And QQQ has returned 82.86% compared to 102 for this Vanguard ETF. And QQQ costs twice as much. The expense ratio is 0.20. So I feel that VGT, the Vanguard Information Technology ETF, gives you a better return over the last 5 years for half the price. So I think you can't go wrong with an ETF like that if you want more tech coverage. And here we go sliding into number 4, VHT, Vanguard Healthcare ETF. Top 5 holdings are United Health, Johnson & Johnson, Eli Lilly, Pfizer, and AbbVie. And I like this particular ETF because, you know, these healthcare companies have been around for a long time. They're very stable. People need healthcare. You know, certain other parts of the economy come and go. Sometimes energy is popular, sometimes it's not, sometimes commodities, sometimes they're not, sometimes tech is hot and sometimes it's not. Healthcare is something we all need, so this particular ETF, VHT, I think makes a lot of sense for those who want to invest in healthcare. 0.10, very low expenses, and the returns over the last 5 years are 62%, which beats the S&P 500, VOO, and the total stock market, which is VTI. So anyways, take a closer look over at VHT if you're interested in investing in healthcare stocks. Number 3 is VB, which is the Vanguard Small Cap ETF. I actually invest in this particular ETF. I like it a lot because most of the stocks that I own and most of the ETFs and index funds I own are large cap. So all of my concentration is in big companies. And I didn't really own any stocks in small caps. Research has shown that over long periods of time, like 20 years and beyond, small cap stocks actually generate greater return. So I wanted to own more small cap stocks. VB fits the bill. It's super cheap. It charges 0.05 as a expense ratio, and it invests in thousands of different stocks. So if you are looking for a small cap ETF, this is one that I like a lot. The returns have been 34% over the last 5 years, which is not astronomical, but during a time when large cap growth have done really well, I think it's definitely a respectable return. So now we're going to number 2. Number 2 is an ETF that all you guys have heard of. I invest in this particular ETF in my own retirement account, in my Roth IRA, and it's VOO, the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF. You know it, you love it. There are 506 stocks. The top 5 are Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla, and Alphabet. One of the cheapest ETFs around with a 0.03 expense ratio. And it's generated 51.95, almost 52% over the last 5 years. What's not to love? Super cheap, great diversification across large cap stocks. And that brings us to number 1. You know it, you love it. VTI, the Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF. I also own this in my Roth IRA and in my regular investment account. And as people who follow this channel for a while know, every month during 2022, on the first of the month, I invest a chunk of money into VTI. I love it because it includes these large cap S&P 500 stocks, but it also includes the mid caps and the small caps. And I love having the diversification across all asset classes and having exposure to all parts of the US economy. The expenses are rock bottom at 0.03%, and the return has been 48% over the last 5 years with the markets going every which way. I continue to invest every month, and I'm glad that you have stuck with me all the way through this list from number 10 to number 1. So I'm interested to know, which ETFs do you guys invest in? Do you have any overlap with the ones that I just talked to you about? Or do you invest in some other totally different ETFs that maybe I don't even know about? So please write in the comments like, I like, and then whatever ETF or any detail. And I'd love to hear from you guys. If you liked this video, it would be really awesome if you would give it a thumbs up, because then it will let other people who are maybe interested in ETF investing know about this video. And if you're not yet a subscriber, I'd love to have you around to see other videos. So click subscribe and the notification bell. Then you'll get a heads up when I make new videos. I'm really glad to have you along today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.